Hi everybody and welcome to Transformers TCG Deck Techs. My name is Jimmy and welcome to my very first YouTube video. The purpose of this channel is to build new and innovative decks that people may have not seen before so that they can take them to their local gaming stores or their friends' houses and just have a great time with them. These decks are designed to have fun above all else, not necessarily win tournaments, although they have, but the primary function of these decks is to have fun, which is what this game is all about. To give a little bit of background about myself, since this is my first video, I grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana. I was born in 1980, so a few years before the Generation 1 cartoon came out. And around 1985, my cousin Jeff decided he was going to introduce me to Transformers, and I have been a huge fan ever since. I've seen almost every cartoon episode. I've seen every movie multiple times, and I would like to think that I could give you an 85 answer on any trivia question, but don't quiz me if you see me. Now, if you told me a week ago that I was going to be making YouTube videos, I would have called you crazy. But here I am making YouTube videos. And the reason is, a week ago, last Friday, the guys over at Wreckin' Rule, which if you have not seen Wreckin' Rule's videos, I'm going to have their YouTube channel link in my description. And they provide gameplay videos for the Transformers card game. They are fantastic. They always play crazy decks. Joe is a madman from what I understand. But their videos are great. And if you want to see great gameplay videos of Transformers, go check them out. But last week, they had a live stream. And Wave 2 just came out March 1st. And I had been messing around with a character that I fell in love with immediately. And built a deck. And I sent them the deck list. And they decided that they were going to go ahead and play the deck on their live stream. And I was ecstatic. I thought it was amazing that one of my decks was on one of their videos. The deck did not perform as well as I would have liked, but I think Frenchie had fun playing it. But since that video, I have been getting messages from people who have watched the video. And they liked the deck. They were asking me questions about how the deck was put together, you know, what's in the deck, you know, where I came up with the idea. And one of the people that contacted me asked me if I did videos. And I said, no. But I started thinking, why am I not doing videos? You know, I'm always coming up with crazy decks, and they're just fun decks. The people that I play with on a regular basis enjoy the decks that I bring. So I thought, why not? Well, the deck that I had on their live stream was a deck that I called Skywarp's Lazarus. And it revolves around Wave 2 Skywarp. Skywarp is a plane specialist that costs 10 stars. And it reads, when you flip to this mode, return a card that has no battle icons from your scrap pile to your hand. This is what got me excited about this card, because typically the most powerful cards in the game have no battle icons. And if you just use them once during the course of a game, they tend to turn the tables. Well, what happens if you use those cards multiple times in a game? So it got me thinking. Well, if we look on the other side, it says, once per turn, when you play or flip a battle card that has no battle icons, this gets +3 damage and +3 armor until end of turn. That's incredible. You know, getting this guy up to 6 damage on this side just because you flipped or played a certain card, that's great. So I started thinking about who I would want to use, or what I would want to use in this deck. The first card that came to mind was a battle card called I Still Function. This card is very powerful, one of the most powerful cards in the whole game. It reads, return one of your KO'd characters that has 12 stars or fewer to the battlefield and repair 1 damage from it. At the end of turn, KO it. Bringing back a character for another turn to do what it does is fantastic. This card played once in a game can turn the tables in your favor. Skywarp, because of his ability on his alt mode side, allows you to play this card multiple times. That's crazy cool. So, with those 2 cards, I started thinking about the deck. The first card that came to mind was because of I Still Function, and it's a character card. The first character that I added to the deck was Ransack. Ransack is amazing with I Still Function because this reads, this character's attack is equal to the number of damage counters on it. Well, if you use I Still Function on Ransack, he comes back into play with 7 counters on him. That means his attack is 7. That is really incredible for a 6-star card. So this was the card that immediately came to mind. His other ability is okay. I mean, you probably won't ever use it in a game. Maybe once in a while you will. But it reads, when you flip to this mode, move 2 damage counters from another character to this one. I mean, it could come into play. Probably not in this deck because it's an aggressive deck. That's kind of more of a defensive ability. But you probably won't use that. The whole idea is to get him to this side and keep using I Still Function over and over and over. So, with those 2 characters in the deck, I started thinking about what the third character was going to be. And on the live stream, it was Wave 1 Skywarp. And the reason for that was he has an ability that allows me to take damage from him when he's defending and put him on somebody else, which the target was Ransack. The whole point of that deck was to get Ransack into the KO pile as quickly as possible. While it was cool, it very rarely came up. It was too gimmicky. And the guys at Wreck and Roll told me that after they were finished playing the deck. There were some suggestions that they provided. Joe suggested that I use Flame War, which is a great card. It's a 5-star character, so I would get 1 more battle card that has a star on it. And I explored that idea. It didn't work too bad, actually. It was a very heavy blue deck. It survived many huge attacks, but ultimately I just couldn't push enough damage through. But Brian suggested a character that ultimately made it into the deck, and that is Skrapnel. Now, Skrapnel reads, when you flip to this mode, you may KO one of your Insecticons. Ransack's an Insecticon. If you do, tap an enemy that has 13 stars or fewer. Now, the only characters in the game that are more than 13 stars are all of the Combiners, Metroplex, and Omega Supreme. So every other character can be tapped by this ability. Most players don't use this card for that ability, but because of this interaction with Ransack and an interaction with I Still Function, you might actually use this ability more often than you would think in this deck. Also, Skrapnel obviously is an Insecticon, so you can actually I Still Function him back, flip him, use himself for this ability, and tap one of the opposing characters for you to attack. That's crazy cool. Now, the ability that most people use this card for is on this side, and it reads, this can't take more than 3 damage from a single attack, which is really good because he's got 0 armor. Well, it doesn't matter how much damage they do to you. If it's 3 damage, he takes 3. If it's 15 damage, he takes 3. There's another card in this deck that will help make it so that the opponent will have to attack into Skrapnel several times before they are allowed to attack into anybody else. And we'll get to that here in a minute. But those are the 3 characters that I decided to use in this deck. So now we'll go on to the battle cards, and we'll go ahead and start with the one that we've already seen, and that is I Still Function. I mean, I've already explained this one, but to reiterate, I use this primarily to bring back Ransack. Bringing back a character that will have 7 damage on him every time you bring him back is great. There are times where you're going to use this on Skrapnel just to bring him back in and flip him and tap somebody down. But its primary function is to bring Ransack back. And thanks to not having any icons, Skywarp's alt mode ability can bring this back multiple times. There are 3 copies of I Still Function in this deck. The next card, which is also an action with no battle icons, is Ready for Action. Now, before I said there's ways to make it so that your opponent has to attack into Skrapnel, or I mean even Ransack, but primarily attack into Skrapnel multiple times without touching the other guys. Well, the reason is because of this card. It reads, untap one of your characters that has 10 stars or fewer. So that's every character in this deck, but this will probably be used primarily on Skrapnel. You attack him with Skrapnel, he's your only tapped character, they have to attack Skrapnel back. You play this, untap Skrapnel, attack with Skrapnel again, they have to attack back into Skrapnel. So you're going to be able to use this multiple times on Skrapnel, and he's going to help the rest of your guys survive that way. There are 3 copies of Ready for Action in the deck. Now we move on to the rest of the battle cards, and we'll start with Peace Through Tyranny. Now this card is typically used in aggressive decks, which this is an aggressive deck. But it's a card that reads, you may KO one of your characters that has 6 stars or more. If you do, take an extra turn after this one. Every character in this deck is 6 stars or more. But usually, players use this card for the 2 orange icons. That's pretty much all they use it for. Very rarely do you see somebody use the action for its action, but in this deck, it's actually used quite often. This is a great way to actually get Ransack into the KO area. And you don't necessarily want him there that early, but to take an extra turn that early in the game can be game breaking. But you can use this on any one of the characters. So if you need to take that extra turn at some point during the game, go ahead and use this. There are 3 copies of Peace Through Tyranny in the deck. Now, because this is an aggressive deck, we're going to have multiple cards that have 2 orange icons. So it's natural we want to give our characters bold. So the next action is Supercharge. It has an orange icon, and it's an action that reads, one of your characters gets bold 3 until end of turn. It's a staple in just about every single aggressive deck that has a lot of orange in it. There's really no reason not to play this card in this deck. It will increase the offensive output of one of the characters incredibly. So we go ahead and put 3 copies of Supercharge in the deck. The next card is an action called Swindled. And it reads, draw 2 cards, then scrap 2 cards from your hand. If you begin the game with only Decepticon characters, you may play an upgrade. When I first built this deck, I didn't have many upgrades in it. And the upgrades that I had weren't necessarily powerful enough to warrant a card to play an extra upgrade. I would just typically just play an upgrade and then play actions to do things. But this version of the deck has quite a few upgrades in it. And since all of my characters are Decepticons, there's no reason not to play this card. It digs further into your deck. It puts cards into your scrap pile. It makes it so that you see more cards so you can get to the cards you need to get to. So I went ahead and put 3 copies of Swindled in the deck. Okay, so that's all the actions that have orange icons. So we'll move on to the rest of the actions. The next action is Rapid Conversion. Now, the reason why this card is in the deck is because we have a character that has an ability that we want to use as often as possible. So the more times you flip a character, the more times you get to use their abilities, obviously. Well, this is an action that says flip one of your characters to its other mode. Simple enough. We want to use Skywarp's ability to get back as many cards from the scrap pile as we can to use over and over and over again. But we only have 2 copies. And the reason for that is there are a lot of situations where, you know, you'll have a card in your scrap pile and you'll flip Skywarp to go grab it. But even if you were to flip Skywarp back, you're not going to be able to play that other action because you've already played Rapid Conversion for the turn. Well, there's some cards in this deck now that will allow you to play a Rapid Conversion and the card from the scrap pile. But because of those interactions, we only have 2 Rapid Conversion in the deck. The next card, which is the last action, is Espionage. And the reason why this is in the deck is because there are a lot of combiners out there, and combiners need their enigmas in order to combine. This card reads, choose a battle icon color. Then look at your opponent's hand and scrap a card from it that has a battle icon of that color. Well, all of the enigmas have green as their icon. So if you see that the opponent has acquired one of their enigmas, you can go ahead and play this, name green, and get rid of their enigma so that they can't combine. The reason why this is a great card is because of the green icon. With green icons, you can actually swap cards with this card to put it into your hand. So if you're battling and you flip this card, whether it's offense or defense, you can swap this with a card in your hand and put this into your hand so you can use it against their enigmas. You can use this against anything, really. I mean, if you're playing an aggressive deck with a lot of orange, you can name orange. If you're playing a defensive deck that has a lot of blue, you can name blue. But the primary reason why this is in this deck is to try to prevent combiners from combining. Now, because of the green icon, I only have 2 copies. With all the bold that's in this deck, you're going to see this quite often. So because you don't have to draw into this, you can actually just grab it from the cards that you flip. You only need 2 copies of it, in my opinion. So that's all the actions in the deck. Now we're going to move to the upgrades. And we'll go ahead and start with the most boring of the upgrades, that being Improvised Shield. Pretty much all bold decks have this for the 2 orange icons. But it's an upgrade armor that gives your character tough 1. There are no blue icons in this deck whatsoever, so having tough 1 won't really matter a whole lot, except on Skywarp. There's only 6 cards that don't have icons in the deck, so it still may not be worth playing, but if you're going to play this card on anybody, it should be Skywarp. But this card is in here purely for the 2 orange icons. There are 3 copies of Improvised Shield in the deck. The next card is the card that I mentioned earlier that's going to help us with Rapid Conversion and playing additional cards during the turn, and that's Multi-Mission Gear. It's an upgrade armor that reads, when you put this on a specialist, you may play an action. Well, Skywarp is a specialist. So when you play this on him, you get an extra action for the turn. So you can actually flip Skywarp, go grab something from the scrap pile, play Rapid Conversion on Skywarp. Then you can play this card and then play whatever the card was that you went and grabbed from the scrap pile. This will make it so that Skywarp will get the +3 damage from playing the card with no icons. This was a suggestion made by Frenchie from Wreck and Roll, and I'm glad that he mentioned this card. there's 3 copies of multi-mission gear in the deck. The next card is Bashing Shield. This is a upgrade armor that reads, when you put this on a character, scrap an enemy armor. Now the problem with aggressive decks is sometimes they run into other decks that have armors that cause problems. Force Field is one that comes to mind. There are, numerous blue decks out there that run reinforced plating and the like, and we need to be able to handle those cards. So this is in there, has an orange and a green icon, so we can grab this from the cards that we flip during battle. And there's only 2 copies because of that, because we're going to see this card often. We don't need to draw into it. So there are 2 copies of Bashing Shield in the deck. Similar card, but handles weapons, is Enforcement Batons. This is a weapon that reads, when you put this on a character, scrap an enemy weapon. We're not overly concerned about weapons in this deck because we're just trying to outdamage the opponent, but because we're trying to outdamage the opponent, there are some times where we want to get rid of weapons. I mean, this gives +1 damage, but that's not the reason it's in here. It's solely so that we can make sure that we win the damage race. Since it has an orange icon or a green icon, we have 2 copies of Reinforcement Batons. The next card is Flamethrower. This is in every, or just about every deck that revolves around orange icons. This is a upgrade weapon that gives your character Bolt 2. So you're going to be flipping 2 extra cards. You want to see orange. So there's no reason not to have this. It's a staple. And we have 3 copies of Flamethrower in the deck. The next card is a weapon called Grenade Launcher. And this reads, after the upgraded character attacks, we scrap this card. And that's not a great ability, but when it gives you +4 damage for a turn, we'll gladly play that. There's a reason why this was played in so many decks during Wave 1, and there's a reason why it's going to see a lot of play during Wave 2 as well. So we have 3 copies of Grenade Launcher in the deck. The last upgrade that we have that has orange icons is Mounted Missiles. It has 2 orange icons. It gives you 2 damage. And it's a weapon that reads, this can be in an armor or utility slot. So even if we have weapons on our guys already, and we play something like Swindled, or we just simply, play this on somebody, it's going to give somebody +2 damage. There's not a lot of utilities or armors in this deck, so this will find a spot somewhere. This is our star card for the deck. The deck came to 23 stars worth of characters, so we have 2 copies of Mounted Missiles in the deck. And our last card is Field Communicator. This was also suggested by Brian from Wreck and Roll, and I'm also glad I put this one in because it allows you to get free stuff. It's an upgrade utility. When you play this on a specialist, scrap the top card of your deck and you may play that card. That's really, really cool. It gives you +1 damage too, which is okay. It's on a utility, so it's going to help. But being able to play free cards from the top of your deck is incredible. It's got a white icon, so it's going to give you some extra flips during battle. But being able to play this and, getting, free weapons off the top or, just anything really. There's going to be situations where you may flip a ready for action and you don't have any tapped transformers, or you flip an I Still Function and you don't have any transformers in the KO area, which is fine. But the benefits of this card greatly outweigh, the chances of that happening. So we have 3 copies of Field Communicator in the deck. So that is the deck, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope that you guys can build this deck and take it to a local gaming store and have fun with your friends with it. And if you have any questions about the deck, or if you have an idea for a deck, I'm going to have my email in the description as well. If you want me to try to help you build a deck around a certain character or a certain battle card, I can help you there as well. Just remember that, you know, you don't have to be perfect with your decks. It's a process, you know, but you got to start somewhere. And like this deck here, I think this is like the 6th rendition of this deck. So it's a process, you know, but you will get there. Hopefully you guys will enjoy this deck. And if you want to subscribe, please do so. Like the video if you want. And I'll talk to you later.